So how's it going, my comic gentlemen? We're here today with Ray Jamison, the creator of the Madcaps. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing well. Life is good.
So, how long have you been creating comics?
Creating comics in specific, this is my first stab. I've been writing stories and I've been collecting comics forever. This is my first time on the other side of the page, for lack of better wording.
How does it feel?
Um, I like to compare it. I've heard this comparison before, like a carnival. It's just as scary as it is exciting.
Yeah. Do you kickstart your books?
I have established a publisher, Philip Russert of Philbo Publishing. He's just taken me on. He'll be taking care of the Kickstarter and everything from that point onward, as long as we're still in partnered. Very, very grateful to have him take me on. He's a very busy guy. This year is a full year for his publishing group.
Congrats, man. That is awesome.
Thank you.
You know, like I know a lot of creators that spend a lifetime trying to get a book published, and you come right out of the gate swinging and kick ass. You know.
Well, I think I had. I, th- I think it's very easy to overlook. I've This comic has been based off of the first tabletop RPG that I've run as a game master, and it was all homebrew. So the lore, everything was my own making, and that was like years ago. So I think one advantage I have is I have a lot of material to make the script for my comic and then give to my artists and then go from there. So if I had absolutely zero material to work with and was completely fresh, I don't think I would have had my book published. I think the main reason Philip took my book on, he says he doesn't have anything fantasy, and he doesn't have anything like his big concern with like fantasy. When you think fantasy, well, some knights on some horses slay a dragon, save the princess, and according to Phil, this book for a fantasy setting is very unique. So I was very flattered to hear that.
Is the tabletop game available for the public?
Well, I could. Well, two answers to that. The first one is just before the Kickstarter launches, we will be running a one shot. I'm going to adapt the lore of the game into the Dungeons and Dragons mechanics, and I'm going to be a game master for a one time game. I have 3 artists on my team, and I have 3 voice actors from California that are pros playing D&D. They voice act for like video games and everything else. And it's going to be a prequel to the first issue, which I'm launching this spring.
Is this going to be available through Diamond?
You'll have to ask Philip on that. I think I remember him talking. There's 2 different ones. I remember him mentioning Diamond, but I can't give a straight answer to that because I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah. If you have Diamond codes, I'll add it to the interview.
Oh,
later.
gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate that.
How much of the comic do you have completed right now?
Script finished, pencils and ink finished by Evan Quirin. Before you put that lovely backdrop on, I saw some of his nice artwork sitting behind you there, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Coloring is done by the world caliber Dan Kemp, who's colored over 25% of Spawn, Amazing Spider-Man, Wolverine Origins, Daredevil back in its heyday. This guy makes images look realer than real. I don't know how else to explain that. I'm flattered to have this man and any of these people, from Evan or Dan or Micah Myers, who's lettering, putting their skill set, their metaphorical fingerprints all over this little story I have. It's I'm not going to say overwhelming, but I definitely feel very special to have them on my team.
I was going to say, when did you say this book was coming out?
It's going to be launching in April. I don't have the exact date because we're just waiting. The Kickstarter is getting put together as we speak. The URL for follow this page for when it officially launches should be by the time this interview is posted online, if it's not up then, it'll be a week from that point. So
Okay.
you just keep your eyes peeled. If you look up Philbo Publishing online, or Philip Russert, or you can find me on Facebook, I'm DM Ray, or Instagram, I'm Raymond the DM. DM Ray was taken there. You can keep your eyes peeled. It will be showing up. There's also a Facebook page for the madcaps. You can follow that. Any of these avenues will definitely get you the Kickstarter as soon as it's, or the URL as soon as it's available.
What is the elevator pitch for
Elevator
madcaps?
pitch?
Yeah.
How many sentences am I allowed in the elevator pitch? 60 seconds, something like that?
No, you can take as long as you need. Yeah.
Okay. Medieval fantasy setting, based off of an actual game that was run through players. Many comics nowadays. This is obviously not superhero specific, but especially in superhero, there's always this, how do we make it even grander and bigger? And I've done the opposite. I've decided to make it very intimate. This is just about four friends. Four friends meet back at their hometown. And there's an issue going on with a local drug problem, and it escalates from there. But they're not saving the world. They're not saving the universe or the multiverse or anything like that. There's an issue inside of the city. The best comparison in regards to intimacy of threat level, when I think of Spider-Man, I think of him beating up mobsters or fighting the Sandman as he's trying to raid a bank. I don't think of like the Spider-Verse, which very successful story arc, very successful franchise, the multiverse, but not my cup of tea personally. And my story is similar to the first example of Spider-Man I gave. It's very up close. It is the threat level scales. It isn't, how are we going to beat the world destroying monster? It's very, very street level, for lack of better wording. And also, more importantly, which I think is a very important dynamic, the characters, the four main characters, they're not infallible demigods. They're actually, it would be very easy to overwhelm and kill them. They all bring something different to the table, and they all have their own flaws, their own strengths, and it is about how they work together to solve a problem. Because any one of them alone, not as effective. It's almost like their sum is greater than their whole, for lack of better wording.
Are you going to base any of this in reality, or
in what respect?
because you said the whole drug thing, so I was wondering, like, are you?
Oh, I see. I should give a disclaimer. This isn't about drug use as it is about drug abuse. So
Okay.
yes, there is a little bit of a drug aspect in it, but I wanted to make sure I didn't come across as preachy or anything like that. Sometimes when you get into sensitive topics like that, it's easy to put people off and make them roll their eyes. So I just make sure that it's a cool story that happens to have dynamics in play, but it's not hyper focused. I don't want to go back to like any arcade game that you've played in the 90s and be like, winners don't do drugs. I want to make sure I'm not kind of cudgel people with messages like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is this going to be a standard 32-page issue?
3 issues, mini-series. They're all 22 pages long. It follows a 3-act setting, so each issue is one of the acts. And I definitely promise, although it's low scale, it does ramp up every act. Like there has to be a setting, and there has to be an establishment of some things. But as it gets going, by the end, the 3rd issue is a well-earned climax. We'll put it that way.
Okay. This sounds like a pretty good book.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, are you able to share the covers on here? I know you asked for them before for the thumbnail. I can talk a bit about the characters because each character is one of the variant covers.
Yeah. Tell us about the covers and the characters.
All right. So, are you able to show them here?
I'll add them in when I edit it.
Okay, cool. So, I'll start with the group shot. You can see all 4 of them. That is the main cover. That's drawn by Jimbo Salgado. who is an excellent artist. I am super happy to have him draw that for me. It's colored by Dan Kemp, who also colored the interiors. Big fan of Dan. The first cover is a dark-skinned, a bluish-skinned elf. His name is Chasgo Blundale, and in the actual cover image, he's depicted as entering a room while donning a human disguise. He comes from a race of elves that are very, for lack of better wording, xenophobic. They don't really want anything else to do with other kind. His kind lives in a mountain range that has a lot of silver deposits. And this is an actual thing that happens to humans. If you consume a lot of silver, it'll actually tattoo your skin blue. There's an actual scientific term for it. Chasgo has a similar condition, but because of that, he has a lot of resistance to magic, all the silver flowing through his system. Because of this, his people they have a high resistance to magic, and they actually worship the mountain. They think the mountain protects them, and they look at anybody that can cast spells as like they're an abomination. They want nothing to do with magic at all, which is an interesting dynamic. He felt his family and his group of people were dysfunctional, so he left the mountains after being approached by some being that gave him some magic abilities. Very similar to how the symbiote was able to cancel out Peter Parker's spider sense, this being was able to bypass the silver in his system and allow him to use some magical gifts. This reiterated why he left the mountain. He would have been killed on sight. Moving on to the next cover, there's a fella named Dunnan-Eny. In his picture, there you'll see what looks like a telescope sticking out of his backpack, and he's raising his goggles. In the foreground, you'll see this tree stump, what's left of it, and he is a half dwarf, half gnome. He draws from both bloodlines, but he doesn't fit in well with either. He has discovered, unlike his mother, who has a natural influence on nature around her, he seems to have an arcane influence on metals and crystalline structures. So that telescope, there's nothing special to it, but he's able to rig it so it can like blast raw magic out of it. It's kind of like a cannon, if you will. He has experience smithing. He's only 3'10", little guy. He smiles a lot, which is like a coping mechanism. He'll smile at problems. He'll smile when he's happy. Moving on to the next one is the large fella in the red cape. His name is Madrakis Darthual. He is he's a being. The creatures they're known. It's pronounced Weir, and he's a descendant of something known as the Great Stormworm, which is a giant kaiju-like electric eel that lives out in the ocean. His gizzard, he's able to store up raw lightning and vomit it out, much like a skunk has its smelly defense mechanism, or a snake can store venom and use it from its fangs. It has limited reserves. Although he's large and brawny, he clears 300 pounds in body weight. His most threatening dynamic is his brain. He has a huge affinity towards the arcane. So a lot of people look at him and think of him as some type of frontlines grunt, but he's actually very, very intelligent. And then lastly, there's the dwarf holding the severed head of a creature on the ground. I did not mention the artists of each one. I'll just go back there. So the first one was Chasgo Blundale, the blue-skinned elf. That was drawn by Chicago's Erica Hollis. There is, who was after that? Dunnan-Eny, that was the fellow with the magic telescope over his shoulder. That was drawn by Riley Stark of New York. We also have Madrakis Darthual. He was hand-painted. The red-caped lizard fellow is hand-painted by John Zalesnik. He's painted things from like Magic the Gathering, lots of like Warhammer, lots of video games. If you've ever played the original Shinobi for NES, he painted the cover art for that. That's the same artist, which is really, really wild. And then lastly, this dwarf, This is drawn by Javier Solteras, and he's responsible for the design and the first stretch of the second volume of Ghost Rider, where Dan Ketch took over. I have all those comics. I don't know how I got a hold of these guys, but I definitely feel super lucky. The last that drawing there of the dwarf, the character's name is Sarlacc Swamp Trudger. He comes from a group of dwarves that decided to leave the mountain and start farming, but as traditionally dwarves can be stubborn, they decided to farm in the middle of swamplands. So over time, they've kind of manually terraformed out and cleared out the swamp and made it their own lands. Because of this, they're good at farming, but they're also good at hunting and slaying things that go bump in the night that like to live in the swamps. Eventually, he moved into a town called Ivywood. He felt he had a calling to, he worships something known as the divine, and he wanted to set up a church inside Ivywood and be a beacon of light. So the setting of this comic takes place in Ivywood during the drug problem, and he's right in the thick of it. You can see he's got an axe. That's actually a holy weapon. He's really good at tracking down creatures, but he also has some divine blessings from him. So something like the undead, he has a lot of advantages against. And what else is seen in that image? I don't have the image in front of me. I know he's holding the creature, but that isn't that's supposed to be a testament of his abilities. That's a large creature, which he's at least outsmarted, but maybe he's more powerful than the creature, but you're not supposed to know by the time you look at that cover. It's just supposed to have that boom, that pop, that invitation to what's this supposed to be about. I think that's all 5 covers.
That is. Yeah. Do you have Comic-Cons planned this year?
I do not, but my publisher does. He goes to quite a few. So this is not my day job. So with my kids, my wife, my day job, I'm kind of limited in those options, which was all the more reason why I'm so grateful I was taken on by Philbo Publishing.
So if people find them at their Comic-Con, they'll have a copy of your book?
That's the plan. Looking forward to getting this stuff out there, yeah.
Sweet. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, keep your eyes out. The Kickstarter, the link will be available soon, launching in April. Again, you can look on Philbo Publishing for more details. He has many other books, and also on my Facebook profile, I do review comic books. I'm about to release my 15th review. I've done some for Philbo Publishing. I've done some for many, and they're all indie. Definitely support Indiecomics. My latest one was by a fellow named Chance Eggerly. It's the second book I reviewed. It's literally about a boxer getting superpowers. There's something for everybody, and there's some really cool stuff in there. But you can check me out on there. But definitely Philbo Publishing for now, and check out the Madcaps page on Facebook.
All right. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk with me.
Well, thank you very much. Looking forward to sharing this story with everybody who wants to have a look.
What? You mean you haven't subscribed to Comicchatauthority?
Oh, come on. Subscribe already. What are you waiting for? It's no big deal.
Like, man, don't forget to tell him to hit that like button.
Yeah, that too. Just subscribe.